Hello, I'm Zuhdi Jasser, the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. On July 19th, Hizb ut-Tahrir, an internationally radical Islamist organization that has been growing around the world with large followings in Europe, Turkey, Indonesia, and across the Muslim world, is having its first American conference in Chicago. It's being hosted at the Hilton in Oak Lawn, and has brought a lot of controversy and discussion. At our organization, at the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, we were founded in 2003, and we're founded on the premise that this war is not a war against a tactic, but rather one against an ideology. That terrorism is simply a means to an end, and that ends that we're fighting, that fuel that drives radical Islamist terrorism is Islamism, or political Islam. And that globally you will find very many versions of Islamism, from the democratic parliamentary versions that want to institute Sharia law in peaceful parliamentary election type ways where the majority oppresses the minority, to the more radical, flagrantly militant ways as we see with Al-Qaeda. But ultimately they all share one ideology, which is political Islam and the imposition of Islamic law and the driving constitution of society, which they view should be the Quran and Sharia law. Hizb ut-Tahrir's initial conference in America may be dismissed by some as being a small fringe group which has a small following, but they've been around in the United States for some time, and there are many experts that have written quite a bit and have been studying it and exposing a lot of this over the past few decades, with their origins in California through some Muslim organizations, and having a magazine called California that has been spread, as the Investigative Project has recently also discussed, and also with some origins in Chicago, and not coincidentally their conference on July 19th is in Chicago. I think what is the most important thing, and we at the American Islamic Forum have been working to counter, is to expose the dangers of political Islam. And this organization, I think, is a sentinel group and a sentinel challenge right now to American Islamist organizations to expose really where they stand. Their conference is titled "The Fall of Capitalism and the Rise of Islam." Clearly this is a supremacist organization. Clearly they want to affect and educate Muslim youth and indoctrinate them in their radical supremacist version of Islam. And I think it is incumbent for American citizens to look at what is happening in Chicago with other Islamic groups and what they are saying. Do they just condemn them and dismiss them and say, oh, we have nothing to do with them, we have so many degrees of separation? Or do they actually say, you know what, we have these papers, these statements, these petitions that we have signed saying that we will not stand for the Islamic State. We will work against the initial founding documents of the Muslim Brotherhood and the ideologies of Sayyid Qutb and Hassan al-Banna and others. For you need to look back at Hizb ut-Tahrir's history and see that it was founded by a Palestinian cleric out of the Middle East that basically took the ideas of the Muslim Brotherhood and formed his own party of liberation. And I think it's important that this group, as small as it is, if it is small, but I think internationally most academics would agree that it's growing, and while it condemns terrorism, they exploit the freedoms of our country in the United States in order to indoctrinate Muslim youth and spread their ideas. At the core of the beliefs of Hizb ut-Tahrir is this contest of ideas. Do we as Muslims believe in the separation of mosque and state, or do we believe in the goals of Hizb ut-Tahrir, which uses Islamic language and authoritative Islam to indoctrinate youth that these societies, and look at the ideas that they have on their website. They associate Western society with sin, with decadence, with drugs, with the breakdown of the family unit, with corruption that they associate with capitalism? Or will we as Muslims fight for free markets, fight for liberation, and fight for true liberalism, which is the separation of mosque and state, which is that clerics cannot control society and government, which is the ideas that governmental law should be based on reason and not based on interpretation of Sharia, and that we can practice our law and our personal law faithfully at home, but not want it in government, and that actually religion is more real when you're allowed to sin or not sin in societies like the West. My parents taught me that I could be more Muslim in countries like the United States, based in a secular constitution with an establishment clause, than in societies based in the Islamic State, where clerics control law and the so-called scholars or ulama control society. And this is why we stand against Hizb ut-Tahrir. We make a statement saying that we are against their ideas. We want to expose their radicalism and supremacism, and I don't care whether they condemn terrorism or not. It is a camouflage. It's a facade for them to say that they're nonviolent. In fact, many of their graduates from their programs include individuals such as Sheikh Khalid Mohammed, who became the mastermind of 9/11, have included radicals in the Palestinian militant movement in the Middle East, and other militants across the world. So their ideas serve as the fuel and the progenitor and the seeds for future radicalism of militant Islamists. So I call upon the CARE chapter in Chicago and individuals such as Ahmed Rehab, who interestingly found it important to focus a week of his activism on making sure that the American Library Association canceled one of their conferences because of individuals on the panel, and yet I have yet to see a statement from his organization with the same vehemence, if not more, which is really, I think, more of an Islamic responsibility to speak out against the radicalism of this type of group. So not only CARE chapters, the Islamic Society of North America, which was recently shown to have a radical anti-Semite speaking in its conference, and I think has a lot of questions to answer on its stance on the Islamic State and what their goals are as far as the separation of mosque and state, and whether they are an Islamic political party in America, and whether they truly have separated from their origins, which is as seen in the Holy Land Foundation trial, associated as an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial, and as part of the Muslim Brotherhood movement. They may deny that, but the bottom line is they have not separated themselves from the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood and the establishment of the Islamic State. Lie. Americans need to be vigilant about Hizb ut-Tahrir, about its motivations. Americans need to be aware of where other Islamist groups stand and use this as a litmus test about what their goals are. I think that the fact that Hizb ut-Tahrir preaches an ideology that calls for the destruction of the principle of America needs a discussion about whether these types of groups should be outlawed or not. My sense is, just as the Nazi Party and the Communist Party have the freedom to express what they believe in, it's important to be able to hear these groups and know where they stand, and so that we can challenge Islamist groups and others. If we drive them underground, we won't be able to have this type of discussion and debate. So there's, I think, a healthy debate that needs to be had about whether this should be illegal or not. Clearly, if they openly call for the destruction of our society and our Constitution and aren't able to take allegiance to our U.S. Constitution, then they violate laws of sedition and other important laws of our country. If they call for Sharia law and others, then we need to have that debate, that is an anathema to freedom. And we believe at the American Islamic Forum for Democracy that it's an anathema to Islam. And this civil war within Islam, from the lay Muslims like myself and others that don't want the clerics associated with groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir or Islamist groups to control our mosques and control who we are, that it's time for us to stand up, protest groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir, make it clear to media, government, and others that we will stand against Islamism and its manifestations, from Al-Qaeda to Hizb ut-Tahrir to other Islamist groups like CARE and ISNA and otherwise. Thank you.